Hello and welcome to The Wire. This evening, we're going to be speaking about two very important cases. At the beginning of this year, during the new year, we woke up to the news of women, Muslim women who were vocal on Twitter, on social media. They were being sold online, their photos were being auctioned online, and over 100 journalists, students, and activists were put on this platform called GitHub, and their photos were auctioned online. And recently, during the past couple of weeks, we've been seeing that another such instance has surfaced, another such case has evolved, which was to do with an application called Clubhouse. Now, Clubhouse is an audio application, it is a chat application wherein young Muslim women, again, their body parts being sexualized, extremely disturbing content, graphic details about their bodies, about Muslim women was being discussed. And recently, what we've been seeing is that several arrests have taken place in connection with both of these cases. And what is interesting to note here is that given the kind of arrests that are taking place, there are young people, students, college-going students, young professionals are being arrested in the cases in connection with both the Bulli Bai case as well as the Clubhouse case. Now, these patterns of sexualizing Muslim women, of taking down, young women who speak on social media, who are politically quite active, and women who are vocal is not new. So these patterns have been continuing for a long time. And our conversation today will give you an insight about these two cases, but we are going to take this conversation further and tell you about the patterns of the kind of behavior that we're seeing, a bigger ecosystem of Hindutva hate politics that we're seeing play out, not just in terms of digital media, but also the kind of harassment, the threats, and the dangers in which this digital space is evolving. And I'm being joined by two women here today on this broadcast, and we will be discussing these patterns. I'm joined by Naomi Barton of The Wire. Naomi, thank you so much for joining us. Naomi has been following both the cases extensively. She also spoke to one of the persons who was involved with the Clubhouse case, and she will be offering us insights into the understanding of this ecosystem. I'm also joined by journalist Arshi Qureshi. Arshi, thank you again for speaking with us. Arshi is an independent journalist. She regularly contributes to Maktub Media and to alternative media websites such as The Quint as well, so you can find her work there. And we're going to be starting this conversation by taking you all through the kind of arrests that have taken place. So, to begin with, Naomi, I want to go to you and speak about the young people. If you can give us a breakdown of these arrests. Every day there is the mainstream news is reporting about the kind of arrests that are taking place and young people who are involved, but we're not seeing a larger coverage here about the center of the issue, the centerpiece of the issue, which is the kind of harassment and this ecosystem of hate which is playing out. So if you can take us through the arrests that have taken place, and then we will probably discuss the patterns that we're seeing in both these cases.
Right. So, Mihira, what I want to point out over here is that specifically when it comes to the Clubhouse application, and a point that I've made in my article as well, was that the graphic speech that was being conducted, while the video that we saw focused in exclusivity on Muslim women, which is why it gained a lot of traction, it gained a lot of outrage, especially following in on the Bulli Bai and Sulidi's cases. The rhetoric over there in terms of being misogynist and in terms of describing graphic sexual abuse is not necessarily limited to Muslim women. Of course, I am going to focus on the videos that we spoke at that point of time, because I think it's important for us to talk about the intersection of being a woman and being a Muslim, which these people are targeting, in the specific way and the nature in which they are targeting the religion as well. But I do think it's important to mention at the outset that Clubhouse as an app is not one where this kind of rhetoric is limited to Muslim women. There have been multiple cases that have been filed now by Hindu women, both against the stuff that we were seeing, as well as these mock auctions which have been taking place. I think since August of last year, if I'm not mistaken. So to that end, this is more of a like Clubhouse by itself. It works as a sort of ecosystem in and of itself, wherein the rhetoric is super polarized. But it is a little bit different from what we're seeing on other social media spaces.
Yeah. And if you can take us through the kind of arrests that have taken place, a lot of, I think over 9 people have been arrested in connection with both of these cases. And this essentially pertains to younger people, that they are teenagers, they're 19-year-olds, they're 21-year-olds. So if you can take us through these people, I mean, the first arrest that was done in the Bulli Bai case, it had happened in Assam, and this person, Neeraj, he's I think perhaps in somewhere between 18 to 20, or he's just young. And then another arrest which took place of this girl, Shweta, who was an 18-year-old. So there are increasingly young people who are on these applications, and they're using this ecosystem, they're using these digital media spaces to target and harass Muslim women, and generally to target people on the internet. So if you can just speak about this radicalization of young people, and if you can give us some insight into the kind of people who have been arrested. And I will come to Arshi and discuss that when these people were being arrested, these young people were being arrested, there was a lot of discussion in the media about how their personal stories were being looked at as well. That Neeraj was being termed as somebody who was a lone wolf, as somebody who was always on his laptop. Shweta was being described as somebody who has lost her parents. So there is this narrative also which was being created around these people and their arrests. But yeah, so Naomi, if you can tell us about their age, their the number of arrests which have been made.
So I believe at this point of time, I'm not entirely sure, but as of I think day before yesterday, there have been 4 arrests made in terms of the Clubhouse app case specifically. I'm not entirely sure of the
Yeah.
Suli deals and the Bulli Bai cases. But in terms of Clubhouse in and of itself, I can say that none of the people who were arrested at that time was older than 25.
Yeah.
For the most part, they were 19, 21, 22. I spoke to someone whose act on Clubhouse was Kira XD. His name is Akash Soyal in real life. And from what I can gather, they were very different from what we would expect from the usual Hindutva ecosystem, in the sense that he claimed that he was not religious, he claimed that he was not political. In many ways, he did not seem to understand the broader political implications of the kind of activity that he was engaging in. For him, it was sport. He repeated constantly that this was just fun, that everyone in the clubhouse was aware of the fact that all of these statements were being made in an exaggerated, hyperbolic, fun way. He did, however, seem to understand that people would be offended, which is why when he was making these statements, he couched them in the language of it being related to his Muslim mother. I'm not going to repeat the sentences and the statements that he made at this point because they're extremely graphic, but I urge viewers who are interested in this to check out the Clubhouse app. To check out the article on the Clubhouse app that we've posted on The Wire. But what I can say about this space is that we've been tracking hate speech for a while now. We did an article I think, last month where we talked about trads and ratas, which are two specific sort of right-wing ecosystems that end up playing out on social media in particular. And I think the important takeaway from this is that these are spaces that are not deliberately organized by politics. So on one hand, you have your ecosystem, which has very close links to political parties, to political personages. They commandeer a lot of clout in terms of, their religious leaders. They have massive social media influencing following, where their explicit messaging constantly has been related to Hindutva messaging and anti-Muslim messaging. But over here, what we're seeing is what happens when a really normal sort of populace is exposed to this rhetoric for years and years. These are children. I mean, not children. They're adults, and they should be treated like adults. But these are teenagers who have, for all intents and purposes, come of age in a digital ecosystem where this kind of hate speech is really, really normal. So for them, seeing these sorts of things and having this sort of polarized communal stuff is become the stuff where their identities are built on it in relation to each other. This is how they relate to each other as a group. And the really dangerous part of it, in my view, that Clubhouse shows us in particular, is that they don't actually see this as hate speech. They just see this as a way to speak to their friends.
Yeah, and that is something which is increasingly disturbing, that young people are finding abuse and sexualization of other people's bodies as common as speaking to their friends or connecting with other people or seeking social validation on these platforms. So I want to go to Arshi now. Arshi, you've been following the both the cases quite closely. So what kind of insights have you gathered as a journalist, as a Muslim woman, as somebody who's very vocal as well, and you've been yourself a target of abuse and you follow the stories quite closely. So what has been the takeaway for you?
So I think like this, of course, stems. Okay, it's not like when the Clubhouse people say that they are apolitical or they do not believe in religion. I think this comes from a very privileged background, like saying that I'm not religious enough or I'm not apolitical. So how do they? So of course they have seen certain things on. They have read about Muslim hatred or anything. That's why this comes from there, from their family, from the society they live in, the common conversation they have regularly on their WhatsApp. So it comes from there. So saying that apolitical or being like not being religious is very crass thing to say actually, because if you are hating on Muslims and you are hating on Muslim women, sexualizing them, it shows your mind, it shows where you come from. So I don't, I don't think like this should be considered that, okay, these are kids, these are young mind, they are just feeding on something. It has an entire whole political, not political backing, but there's a whole Hindutva ecosystem
Yeah.
which they follow, and they are so consumed by it that they do not realize like how it will affect some community, how it will impact the mental health of certain community, because it's irrelevant to them, like it's the criminalization, it's just irrelevant to them. And also see the Muslim hatred is so much that whether you're selling bangles, whether you are selling shoes, everything, and if you are a Muslim, you have a Muslim identity, you can easily be targeted. It does not matter whether you are the victim, you will be seen as a perpetrator. If you are friends, if a Muslim boy is friends with Hindu woman, so you are the Muslim person will be targeted. So are you seeing like, and nobody cares about it, that how Muslims in their own country are feeling. We feel like a second class citizen, and it has a massive mental impact on us. Imagine reading every day, like on social media, on Twitter, WhatsApp, whatever, like this person has been targeted because he was selling certain thing. This person has been targeted because he was talking to a Muslim woman. This is all really, it impacts you so much. I mean, this realization, I don't know whether people realize, like people from other community, they realize it or not. But for me, like personally, it has impacted a lot because you keep on thinking about it the entire day. Your only thing is, okay, this is happening every day, day by day, something's, these things are increasing, and there's no action against hate speeches. You've seen in Dharm Sansad the way the hate speeches were made. I mean, I mean, it's a call for genocide basically. You've seen how anchors on TV every day they spew hate. And because this is, they are talking to a certain community. It's like, and there is a political backing when the ministers of your country, the big ministers, they haven't said a not even a single word when Bulli Bai app case came out, or Sulli deal, or Clubhouse. Not even a single person. It's just on the our ecosystem, like we journalists or the activists who are aware of it. When we start speaking up, okay, speak against this. Like we keep on asking you to speak against it. That's when an action is taken. So it's all
Yeah.
limited to social media, but we don't know what is going on in the most villages. It's the hate is so rampant that we do not even know. It might not be on social media, but it must be happening. So it's
Yeah.
like there's no way to track any of these things.
Absolutely. So, just to give our viewers some kind of context, that we are discussing these two cases today, and I just want to bring to your attention the kind of arrests that have taken place, and talk about the ages of these people and the action which has been taken by the police. So, currently there are three people who have been arrested by Mumbai police during their ongoing investigation. When we look at the audio app Clubhouse, And these three people are, there is a person called Akash, who is a 19-year-old, there is Jaishnav, who is a 21-year-old person, and Yash, who is a 22-year-old person. So these three people have been arrested currently by the Mumbai police. They are being taken to Mumbai, and the police is claiming that they have made these arrests in connection with the Clubhouse app, and where there were chats which were abusing women, they were sexualizing women, and multiple sections of the Indian Penal Code are being used against these people. And in terms of the Bulli Bai case, there are about 5 people who have been arrested currently. Again, this is happening, the arrests are being carried out by the Mumbai police. And the 5th arrest in the case has happened from Odisha, and a person called Neeraj Singh has been arrested. And previously, Vishal Kumar Jha, Shweta Singh, Mayank Rawat, these were people who were arrested, and the police was claiming that the kingpin, or the person who was behind the app, was Neeraj Bishnoi, and he was arrested by the Delhi police about 2 weeks ago in Jorhat in Assam. So these are extremely young people, and what we're discussing today is that there is no way in which young people would randomly target people on the internet. There is an ecosystem, there is an ecosystem of hate, of political targeting that we see across the country, where like Arshi mentioned, from the Dharm Sansads to the kind of deafening silence that we see from the political community against these calls for genocide. And there is a pattern to the kind of radicalization which is taking place. A lot of commentary is happening currently on the fact that these people were extremely young people, and they're educated, hate mongers. They are people who are targeting people, they're committing crimes on the internet, and they're polarizing the digital spaces. But these are, again, people that we grow up with, the people that we see in our communities, in our societies. So Naomi, to go to you, what is this, if you can break down for our viewers this whole trads and writers, there is this distinction within this ecosystem as well, and how do we see that playing out, and how are young people fitting into this narrative?
I actually want to take a step back, Sumedha, and I want to address one of the points that you made, the idea that these kids, they're young, they're college going, they're people like us, they're educated, they come from middle class families, they seem to be
Yeah,
Anglo-centric.
that's the narrative that we see in the mainstream. Yeah.
Yes. What I want to point out is that there's a lot of efforts to whitewash the activities that they are
Exactly.
doing, by pointing out these factors within a sympathetic, to be able to create a sympathetic narrative around this. Now, I feel like as journalists, it is our responsibility to point out what is effectively the truth. If someone is a particular age, they are a particular age that's relevant to the story, insofar as it gives us certain indicators to what that ecosystem looks like and how these people are being radicalized. I do feel that it's contingent on us to be able to realize that this is not an isolated happening. These are not things that are happening in pockets. It might have been the case that these were happening on a much lower level in 2014, perhaps. But given how mainstream this kind of communal hatred has become at this point, anyone who continues to believe that this kind of hate has not percolated into every single segment and demographic within the society is willfully blinding themselves. You will have hate mongers, and you will have people who believe the absolute worst communal things and will say them out loud at this point, and will feel empowered to say them, and will feel proud of saying them out loud, in any single, at the highest echelons of if it comes to rich people, people who are in positions of academic authority, people who are at the helm of business endeavors. There is no space at this point where people are not touched by this hatred. And I do feel that when a certain media segment is saying that, is clutching their pearls about it, and is showcasing surprise at the idea that this is there, we should all take a great amount of worry for the fact that we have not been paying attention for so long, and this continues to be something that is surprising. I'm going to lead off from that into this trad and Rata's, the distinction we were talking about. Alishan Jafri, who has been tracking the right-wing ecosystem since 2019 at the earliest, at the very least since 2019, he's been monitoring this as an ecosystem that's a sort of you can call it the underbelly of the internet in some ways. The way that Twitter and Facebook is structured is that people on the left will sometimes find it very difficult to see the content of people on the right, because the algorithms make it so that the conversations are very discreet. But when you're in the right, and when you're sort of like seeing what's happening over there, we're seeing an ecosystem of people who are doing things as a form of cultural play. So there will and there will be jokes and there will be engagements with each other of truly the most horrific hate speech that we have seen to date. The trads, as you call them, the traditionalists, are the ones who are extreme proponents of a traditional Hindutva way of living. They're the ones who do not believe in any kind of constitutionalism, any kind of a fair few of them believe that the Modi government is actually very weak in some
Yeah.
ways and is seen as being soft on Muslims and appeasing Muslims. I believe one of them once called them Maulana Modi for issuing an Eid greeting. And the visual depictions that they put out, they involve pictorial iconography of stuff which is has a very long history of hate attached to them. So we will have Nazi symbols, etc., being deployed in this space, as well as graphic representations like cartoon representations of crime, murder, rape, sexual assault, very humiliating activities being perpetrated upon both Dalit and Muslim people. And that's in a nutshell. I mean, it is a lot more complicated than that, but that is the stuff that's pertinent to this conversation right now. When it comes to retas, that is what the trads call the other less violent and I would say less viscerally horrific group of people. So they just call retas because it works as a phonetic synonym to right wings. So in that sense, those are the ones who one would say would be more oriented towards the current mainstream right wing, which is to say the Modi government, as well as people who are they're not as oriented towards going back to a sort of like traditional Hindu life as much as they do believe that the construct of India as it is right now is somewhat tenable.
Yeah. So I think to the viewers, we're bringing to you the fact that there is a certain whitewashing, there is a lot of sympathy which was shown initially when the case had broken down, and when these ages were being published and their backgrounds were being shown to us, stating that they are young people, that they could have been misled. But it is actually pointing to a larger narrative of communal hate, which is trickled down to almost everybody, and there is an increasingly polarized atmosphere as we see, and making digital spaces especially dangerous and difficult for minorities and for women. And Arshi, to bring you in here, you've been following the case and you wrote about it as well. So if you could share with us the kind of experiences and what you've taken so far from understanding this, that there is you write for an alternative media website as well, which is Maktub. So there is a clear distinguishing of the narratives that we've seen that were being pushed by a certain segment of the media. And then, as Naomi pointed out, that it is our job as journalists, as also young people, to point it out to our audiences the truth. So if you can share some bits from the work that you've done on the cases.
So so when I wrote for this on Bulli Bai, when I was targeted, and later on I wrote for this, my what I wrote came out from an anger, like an anger came out in my voice, because imagine just being targeted, and like we are doing our work, we are speaking against the atrocities, we are not like anybody who have done the atrocity, we would speak against it. But then imagine being targeted for it because you're speaking against it. So there is this thing that you cannot, like, if they this basically means just to silence us, to scare us, that if you keep on speaking you'll be targeted again. But honestly, now I don't care. I receive abuses on my Instagram or on my Twitter. I receive abuses, and what can you do? Like, you will just see it, you'll feel bad for 2 seconds, and rest on, we'll move on. Such people, and you know what? The fact is, like, such people who target you and who create this Clubhouse chats and everything, they are they are actually insecure. I mean, they can't even come out in open with a real identity to target you. At least we are there. We are with my Muslim identity as a woman also. So at least I am strong enough, I'm brave enough to speak against whatever is going on, because I want to bring out the truth. So when I when I write such things or read about such thing, it comes from this, there is this anger also, and there's this frustration at how can, like, as we say, like, young people, as young as 18-year-olds or 17 or 21-year-old, we were also in that age. Why didn't even we hear a lot of things? Okay, but there is a like it's, or when you are conditioned in a certain way. Okay, so when you, as you grow up, you can also uncondition certain things.
Yeah.
These people, they did not think about unconditioning themselves, because see, they come from a privileged background, as in from privileged caste, maybe from a privileged community. They know nothing will happen to them. They
Yeah.
can speak whatever they want. There's this conditioning which they've seen all around them. So when I can, if like when I can change myself, I can distinguish between radicalization, or what is wrong, what is right. So why can't people? So because this is, such talks happen in their WhatsApp groups. They think
Yeah.
they follow certain RW ecosystem. They do follow it. They do not realize this, like they might, I don't know whether they, what will the punishment be after this, like even if they're arrested. I honestly, I don't have any hope. They might get released soon, but but this thing is in their head. Like even that Rakesh Jha, his name is, that liberal who,
Yeah.
Liberal, yeah.
yeah, Rakesh Jha. When he, when he apologized, he did not apologize that, okay, I was one of the persons who sexualized Muslim women. He wasn't even apologetic. He just said that I've seen how Muslim behave with women. I've seen how
Hmm.
Muslim men, I have heard. He does not have any proof, whatever he's saying. But there's this, and he actually mentioned ye badle ki bhavna. What is this badle ki bhavna, honestly? Like, how can you just abuse certain community, badle ki bhavna? Because they've been hearing this. It's not like since 2014 it started. Of course, since 2014 it came out in open. Earlier it was inside the walls. Since 2014 it just came out in open, because they know they won't be punished. So this is really, I'm not insecure or anything, but I just get really frustrated, and it really impacts you. Like, till when will we, like, there is a limit to everything. Till when will we speak? So
Yeah.
until and unless these leaders or politicians do not speak up against it, on the other hand, there are leaders who actually support this. There are anchors who support this. Till the time they do not speak against it, I don't think this will, any day this will come down. Like, I don't have any hope.
Yeah, and I think what Arshi is trying to tell us is the fact that there is an impunity which the community enjoys, given their identities, given their privilege. And the impunity is something that we see at a larger political scale, at a larger political level as well. And the kind of polarization which we've been witnessing when we speak about cases such as the Bulli Bai, and when we speak about cases that we've seen on Clubhouse, there is a loose ecosystem wherein these people are operating. It's not sophisticated, it is not organized, but at a political level, as the Wire has shown you initially, during this month we've been covering extensively tech fog, which was our investigation, has shown you that at a larger systemic level, there is polarization, there is an automation of hate which is taking place by the foot soldiers of the BJP, by the IT cells of these political parties, which are investing a significant amount of sophisticated technology in pushing for targeted harassment of people. We showed you through tech fog that the female journalists were being targeted, that the community was being targeted, fake news and disinformation was being spread. You can follow that investigation as well, which will give you an insight as to how this takes place at a larger level, at a more organized level as well. Naomi, just to sort of close in on this discussion and ask you another question, which is that what is the, we of course at the Wire, this is an ongoing sort of conversation where we speak about communal polarization and politics at both levels, be it structural, be it at the level of cases like Bulli Bai and Bulli Bai, and now the Clubhouse case. But what is the big takeaway here, as somebody who has followed this very closely, and you've been writing about it, you've been reporting about it. So what is the big takeaway in this conversation at this point? Because we've been seeing that there are calls for genocide being made. We've been hearing from experts warning signs of an impending genocide. Brandon's statement of the genocide watch, he has given India a warning sign that India could be inching towards an impending genocide. So we see this atmosphere, we see a highly polarized space. What is the takeaway at this point in the conversation?
I'd like to clarify and just to put a finer point on the point that you were making, Sumedha. Gregory Stanton who is the founder of Genocide Watch. So he has an international track record of keeping an eye on this kind of stuff. And his
Yeah.
organization is specifically involved in staging, like what particular stages countries go through before they actually reach the point of extermination. He has said that India is the second most likely country across the world right now to witness a genocide happening next. The first country that he mentioned happened to be Pakistan. So, I mean, in that sense, the right wing should also be a little on the fence about who our close neighbors are and what model they're closely being affiliated with. But no, I think the biggest takeaway from this right now is that the idea that hate is now something which only comes from the top, that is something that is imposed on an otherwise peaceful and otherwise ignorant and otherwise innocent population.
Yeah.
And the idea that somehow at this point of time the voters are or not even just voters, like citizens in general, are people who have no agency in this process, and they are sort of passively receiving hatred as a legacy of the politics. I think that is something we can officially leave behind.
Yeah.
If it's come to a point where hatred is percolated all the way down to students across the board, to our next generation, if our next generation it has reached them, if this is what they're growing up in, if this is the ecosystem they're growing up in, then it behooves us to keep in mind that there is also a generation of Muslims, there is also a generation of Christians, there's also a generation of Dalits who are going to have to grow up facing this kind of stuff happening on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So if we are seeing warnings of an impending genocide, if we are seeing the normalization of hate speech onto every single layer of society, and if we are seeing an entire generation that is steeped in the polarized politics of hate, we really do need to ask ourselves what our future is going to be. And I feel like that's why anyone who's taking Clubhouse or the Sully by Bully deals, if they're taking them less seriously now as just a function of lone wolves or just a couple of madmen doing things out of like just because they're crazy. These are the warning signs of what genocide and impending genocide look like. This is what happens when an entire population does not see anything wrong with exterminating a community in whole, in mass. This is what it looks like. And I think to that end, this is what we need to look at both of these things as signifiers of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Arshi, if I can get in comments from you as to how you see where we are in this conversation. Very spot on, Naomi, in terms of the fact that, yes, that always when we see communal violence breaking out, we've always seen this being played out in the media, in our academic research as well, that this is something which came from the top. There were elements, there were fringe elements. So we can no longer dismiss people in both these cases as fringe elements, because that is now the mainstream. Hate is now mainstream. So Ashi, if I can get in a closing comment from you as to how do you think is what do you think is the biggest takeaway here, and yeah.
So I think, okay, firstly, the mainstream media is quite responsible for all this hate. If they
Yeah.
start speaking against it, of course, they follow a certain model. And it's not like this mainstream media, I mean, if we see Rwanda radio and all thing, so media is actually pretty responsible to show if they are conducting shows like anti-Muslim hatred shows. They know like this people will listen to this, and we cannot control it honestly. We can control it on in within our ecosystem, within our bubble in which we live in. We cannot control beyond it. So if just like Gregory Stanton, he said that there's an impending genocide. There hasn't been any action yet to actually, or any comment from the leaders. I think if politicians start speaking against it and if media starts showing, I think there's still a little hope. Like we can act, we there will be a stop to this. But when they them politicians, if it's benefiting them, of course it's benefiting them. Like even if to run up to state elections, it is benefiting them. So if they start speaking against it and if they start accepting and not denying, the thing is, people have started denying that any of such thing is like such thing is happening, the hate speeches or Muslims or any minorities getting lynched, like they're completely denying this. They have opened their own ecosystem and they are just too much into it that they do not realize that their fellow citizen, how they are being targeted. So it's mainstream media and politicians, I would say, if they should take action, then only we'll be a little step ahead, or then we can have, we'll hope okay something better will happen. Because within family WhatsApp groups or within your society, nothing will change, because whatever they are seeing on TV, they are repeating that.
Yeah. So on this conversation, we were discussing this entire ecosystem of hate, which is trickled down to our everyday lives, and it is no longer something which happens at the top. And we've been discussing the ongoing cases of Bulli Bai and Clubhouse. And on the wire, we've made a consistent effort to ensure that we break down disinformation, that we break down campaigns of hate, that we report and bring you the truth. And this conversation today is an effort to take that forward, to break it down for our viewers, and to observe and to analyze our news. And we will continue to do so. You can read our pieces, our extensive analysis on both Bulli Bai cases and Clubhouse on our website. And I'd just like to thank Naomi and Arshi for joining me today and sharing your insights with us. And we will continue to have these conversations again on the wire and bring to you more analysis on these cases. Thank you so much for everybody who watched us today. And you can reach out to us on Twitter and follow up with us on any of these topics that we've discussed today. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.